It was 3 in the morning, and Ibrahim Traoré's convoy was advancing toward Nialgé, one of Burkina Faso's most remote villages, at a time when no one expected it. Only his trusted aide Marie was by Traoré's side, and they were carrying a mysterious metal box. As they approached the village, Traoré suddenly stopped the car and stared into the darkness. "Here," he said quietly. "This is where everything began 25 years ago." What Marie didn't know was that the contents of that metal box would change the destiny not just of a village but of an entire nation. Traoré straightened up behind the wheel, his eyes carefully scanning the surroundings under the moonlight. The road had ended. Before them lay only a path covered with thorny bushes. "We'll walk from here," he said, turning off the engine. Marie looked around anxiously. "Mr. President, this is too risky for your security. At least wait until dawn." Traoré shook his head. He cradled the metal box in his lap, his fingers caressing the scratches and rusted lock as if reading its history. "I've waited 25 years, Marie. I can't wait a few more hours." Under the moonlight, 2 human silhouettes advanced across Burkina Faso's arid savanna. The sound of cicadas around them heralded the approaching dawn. Marie, holding a small flashlight, followed her president while repeatedly asking herself, what had happened here 25 years ago? And why was Traoré, the most powerful man in the country, coming to this forgotten village in the middle of the night? Beyond the hill, the mud houses of Nialgé village finally appeared. The village was asleep. Traoré paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. His hands were trembling. Marie had never seen him like this. Her leader, always cool and determined, now seemed tense as if confronting a ghost from his past. "This is it," said Traoré, pointing to the smallest hut at the edge of the village. It was even smaller then. "You lived here, Mr. President?" Marie asked, unable to hide her surprise. A painful smile appeared on Traoré's face. "Living isn't the word. Surviving is more accurate." He moved toward the hut but hesitated before reaching the door. "Someone should be coming." Before he could finish his sentence, a rustling sound came from the grass. Marie anxiously reached for her weapon, but Traoré stopped her with his hand. From the darkness emerged a woman nearly 90 years old, walking with a cane. The moonlight illuminated the deep wrinkles on her face and her silver hair. The woman approached with heavy steps, her eyes examining first Traoré, then the metal box. "I knew you would come," the old woman said in Mouré, the local dialect. "I saw it in my dream." Traoré immediately switched to Mouré, a language from his childhood that he never used in official meetings. "Mama Salimata, do you remember me?" The old woman's eyes clouded for a moment, then refocused. With trembling hands, she touched Traoré's face. "How could I forget you, little Ibrahim? The fire in your eyes hasn't changed." Marie watched in amazement. Tears were now streaming down the president's face. She had never seen Traoré cry. The old woman sat on a small wooden bench in front of the hut, inviting Traoré to join her. "You promised you would come," she said, "and here you are." Traoré placed the metal box in his lap. "I kept my promise, Mama. I saved every franc, just as you said." He opened the box. Inside were carefully stacked banknotes and coins. 25 years of savings. Every cent, every franc Traoré had saved since his childhood. "Do you know the story of this money?" Traoré asked, turning to Marie. "I was 12 years old. I came to this village after my family died from drought. I was hungry, sick, and close to death." Mama Salimata nodded as if carrying the weight of those old days. "I found you in front of my hut. You were skin and bones. Everyone said let him die, we don't have enough food to feed another mouth anyway. But you took me in," said Traoré, his voice thick with emotion. "You fed me, healed me. And then," the old woman completed the story, "I gave you a single franc and told you, don't spend this franc. Save it, then save another and another. One day with the money you save, you will save someone else's life, just as I saved yours." Traoré handed the metal box to the old woman. "Here's all my money, Mama. I saved every cent. And as promised, I've brought it back." Marie watched in astonishment. The president of Burkina Faso, the man who ran the country, had secretly come to this village to keep a promise he made to an old woman in his childhood. But Mama Salimata didn't take the box. "This money isn't yours, Ibrahim. It never was. This money is for the lives you will save." The old woman stood up with unexpected agility for her frail body. "Come," she said. "I have something to show you." Mama Salimata led them into the village, toward a small hut. When she slowly opened the door, a faint light pierced the darkness. Marie and Traoré ducked to enter, and at that moment, Traoré's breath caught. The hut was filled with children. 15, maybe 20 children, all sleeping on thin mats. Most were between 5 and 10 years old, but some were still babies. "Who are they, Mama?" asked Traoré, trying to compose himself. "Children who have come in the last 3 years," said the old woman. "Children who escaped after jihadists killed their families. Children left behind by families who lost their crops and homes during the drought from the north. And some were simply abandoned." Traoré looked at the sleeping faces of the children, seeing his own childhood in each of them. "The village doesn't have enough food to feed them," Mama Salimata continued. "There's sickness but no medicine. The water well dried up, and there's no one to dig a new one. I've grown old, Ibrahim. I don't have the strength to help them anymore." Traoré knelt beside a child. The little girl seemed to be trembling from hunger even in her sleep. "You will save them, Ibrahim," said Mama Salimata. "For that franc I gave you 25 years ago, for today." At dawn, Traoré and Marie stood in the village square. Throughout the night, the president had toured the village, visited every home, listened to every family. Nialgué's problems were simple but deadly. No water, no food, no medical help, no school. "What will you do, Mr. President?" Marie asked as the first rays of sun appeared on the horizon. Traoré was still holding the metal box in his arms. "I'm going to save this village, Marie, but not just with this money." In the days that followed, an extraordinary transformation began in Nialgué village by Traoré's order. Army engineers were sent to build a water well. Health teams came to examine, vaccinate, and treat the children. Agricultural experts helped villagers with drought-resistant seeds and irrigation systems. But most extraordinary was Traoré's personal directive. Every home in Nialgué will be renovated, every family supported, and at the center of the village, a school and clinic will be built with the best materials. The ministers were shocked. "This is a huge investment for such a small village, Mr. President," said the finance minister, looking at the budget reports. "Why this village in particular?" Instead of answering, Traoré gave his next instruction. "And this project will be called the Mama Salimata program. If it succeeds, it will be implemented in other villages across the country." A month later, Marie excitedly entered the president's office. "Mr. President, you should see the progress in Nialgué. The well is completed, the clinic has been built, and the school is almost ready." Traoré looked up, a gleam in his eyes. "How are the children?" "Amazing," said Marie. "The health team treated them and they're all recovering now. And the villagers? They sent you a message." Marie began playing a video on her phone. In the video, the entire Nialgué village had gathered in the square. Mama Salimata stood in the middle of the children, who now looked healthier. The old woman spoke directly to the camera. "Ibrahim, I once gave you a single franc and told you, save this, one day it will save a life. You didn't just save one life. You saved our entire village. We can only offer you one thing in return, our love and gratitude." The children shouted in unison, "Thank you, President Ibrahim Baba." Traoré allowed the image on the video to freeze. The smiling faces of the children were incomparably different from their sick and exhausted state just a month before. "We're expanding the program, Marie. Nialgué is just the beginning." Marie couldn't believe what she was hearing. "To all villages?" "Not all at once, of course. But yes, eventually, to all of them," said Traoré. "We spend billions on big cities, on luxury projects. Children in these villages are dying for a few francs. If 1 franc can save a child, imagine what our entire budget can do. 2 months later, Traoré was back in Nialgay, but this time with an official delegation. The village had changed beyond recognition. New homes, a functioning clinic, a school painted in bright colors, and most importantly, healthy children playing in the square. This is the beginning of implementing the same model nationwide. Traoré explained to officials from Mali and Togo who accompanied him. The Mama Salimata program is based on a lesson a child taught me. Even a single franc can save a life, as long as it's in the right place at the right time. That evening, there was a big celebration in the village square. Drums were beating, people were dancing and singing. Traoré, keeping the old metal box by his side, sat next to Mama Salimata. "Do you remember Ibrahim?" said the old woman, watching the village celebrations. "When I gave you that franc, you asked me, 'Why give me money? Why not just help me?'" Traoré nodded. "I remember. And what did I tell you?" Traoré held the old woman's hand, his eyes moist but smiling. "You said, 'Give a man a fish and he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish and he eats for a lifetime.' I didn't understand then, but I understand now." The old woman pressed her forehead against Traoré's, the deepest sign of respect in Burkina Faso. "And now you're teaching the whole country how to fish, Ibrahim Baba." That night, as the celebrations continued, Traoré and Marie stood at the edge of the village, watching the star-filled sky. "I have a question, Mr. President," Marie said hesitantly. "How much money was in that metal box?" Traoré smiled. "I don't know exactly. I saved for 25 years. Maybe 5,000 francs, maybe more." "That's it? That's not enough for all these projects?" "It wasn't about the amount, Marie," said Traoré, still looking at the stars. "What mattered was that I made a promise and kept it. I brought back every cent I saved. And you see, sometimes the smallest promises start the biggest changes." Marie nodded thoughtfully. "So where is the metal box now?" Traoré pointed to the gleaming roof of the new school in the village square. "Under the cornerstone of the school. Children learn above it every day, just as I learned from Mama Salimata's lessons." "And what's the next lesson to learn, Ibrahim Baba?" asked Marie, rarely addressing her president by name. Traoré smiled and pointed to the stars in the sky before answering Marie's question. "Do you see these stars? Each one is a child we can save. Each one is a life we can change. And together, a future we can illuminate." A few weeks later, Burkina Faso media announced the first results of the Mama Salimata program. Child mortality rates had dropped, school enrollment had increased, and agricultural production in villages had risen. The program had quickly attracted interest from neighboring countries, and it all began with a single franc given to a hungry, sick child long ago. Marie placed the media reports on Traoré's desk after reviewing them. "Mr. President, are you thinking of sharing your story with the press? It could inspire people." Traoré shook his head. "No, Marie, this isn't my story. It's Mama Salimata's story. And now it's the story of the children in Nialgay. And soon, it will be the story of all of Burkina Faso." Marie looked at her president, understanding him better now. "So is that the real purpose of the program? To repay a kindness someone once did for you?" Traoré looked out the window toward the horizon. "No, Marie. The real purpose is to pay kindness forward, because sometimes, even a single franc can change a life, and a changed life can inspire a nation." Outside, the first students from Nialgay were receiving training in the newly established agricultural program in the presidential palace garden. They were the future leaders, teachers, and doctors, and each of their stories began with a single franc given to a child in need long ago. Traoré smiled as he watched them. "You see, Marie, sometimes the most valuable treasures aren't kept in metal boxes. They're kept in people's hearts."